the big move of the day. We heard Kevin Adams coming into this talking about that he wants to make a hockey trade, or that he's been trying to make a hockey trade for 2 months now, even during the 13-game losing streak, and that he didn't just want to trade a guy just for prospects and futures and things like that they wanted to try to win now, or win next season, because they're basically out of the playoff push at this point. But they end up making that big trade with the Ottawa Senators. So an in-division trade here. They trade away Dylan Cozens, Dennis Gilbert, and a 2026 second-round pick, and they get back Jacob Bernard-Docker and Josh Norris. Austin, what was your initial reaction to seeing this trade?
So I think it was Kevin Weeks who kind of first reported the inklings of this trade, right? I believe he tweeted out like the Sabres and Sens are working on a trade involving Norris and Bernard-Docker.
Yeah.
My first thought was, and again, this is full transparency, haven't watched a lot of Ottawa this year, haven't watched a lot of NHL hockey this year before the Four Nations, because the Sabres were just so depressing. So my original first thought was, all right, is Norris, still as good as I think he is? Looked it up. Yeah, he can still put it like this. Out of all the teams that we've talked about with Dylan Cozens and players we talked about with Dylan Cozens, I don't think Ottawa and Josh Norris were high on the average Sabres fans list. So it was definitely a shock. But I had been adamant that, a core move needs to be made. And given the state of the team and the state of the player, Cozens made the most sense. Right? Been struggling. You just watch him play lately. He just looks mentally broken. Desperately. He's the definition of, you watch a guy play, he just looks like he needs a change of scenery. Now, I don't know how Sens feel or felt about Norris. Like I said, I haven't really followed them much this year. I don't know if he was also in the category of needs a change of scenery. Didn't really hear his name out there much, except for over the last 24, 48 hours, where I heard maybe potentially Ottawa was listening on him. So definitely caught off guard. How did you feel when you first saw the inklings of this happening? I don't know. When I first saw the Weeks tweet, I think Cozens was. I know I saw some Sens fans say, "Oh my God, Peterka's a Sen." That's not where my brain went.
Yeah, we also heard the Peterka stuff last night that was swirling around about him possibly going to the Rangers, and we heard some other trades. Adams kind of confirmed that there was no validity to that, whether you want to believe him or not. He's got to, look at all options. So maybe Ottawa was looking at Peterka, and then, once they realized Buffalo wasn't interested, they kind of worked their way to Cozens there. But the way Buffalo had been playing, Austin, going in, it's just been depressing. You watched, the way they lost to Tampa, the way that they lost to a really bad, young and talented, but bad this year San Jose Sharks team on home ice. That was a really bad loss. You had that compounding with the Cozens incident last night, where Dahlin was kind of getting mugged at the end of that one play there by a couple of Lightning, and he kind of just stood around and looked like he was at mingling at a wedding or something like that, just kind of standing around. I don't know if that played into him getting moved today, but it definitely wasn't a good look last night for Dylan Cozens, and he ends up, being the main piece that Buffalo moves. And you heard Adams talk about it today, that they needed just to shake up the core. They didn't want to go ahead and blow everything up, but they had to move one significant piece to try to see if that would work. And Ottawa coveted Cozens. So given what has gone on, and given that Cozens has had the season that he's had, given that they both have years left on their contracts, I was kind of intrigued by the move at first. Again, we didn't have all the pieces together of Jacob Bernard-Docker and Dennis Gilbert, and the second round pick is, it is what it is. The Sabres have so many assets, prospects and picks. If you're looking at it from just Cozens for Norris, I think that could possibly be an intriguing move there, given what Norris' skill set is, as long as he stays healthy. That's obviously been the big thing with him having 3 surgeries since 2019.
Yeah, right. So with Norris, kind of got into it back and forth a little bit with somebody earlier today, and they were just like, I hate this trade, blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, what's your concerns with Norris other than health? And they were just like, well, it's just the health. I'm like, that's fair. The health is a very valid concern with Josh Norris. But my counter argument to this, and I will start out this by saying Dylan Cozens is a good hockey player. It just was not clicking in Buffalo anymore, and it was time for a change. I think he'll still be very serviceable for the Ottawa Senators. So that's what I'm going to say there. TSN, I think I didn't watch Trade Center today. I was over in the States working, but they talking about Dylan Cozens like he's Tom Wilson and going to take all the fights away from Brady Tkachuk. Please just watch hockey, guys, on TSN. I know it's very hard with your job. You cover a lot of stuff, but that's not Dylan Cozens' game. It was at one point. Hasn't really been that way for a year and a half. What Dylan Cozens is a hardworking player who has the ability and some upside to be a 55, 60-point player. So that being said, back to Norris's health concerns. Yeah, it's fair. But guess what? Dylan Cozens has been healthy, but he has not been good this year, has not been good for the last year and a half. People can vary on their opinion here, but if Dylan Cozens was living up to his potential, I think it's not pretty obvious. The Sabres are at least in the playoff hunt right now. I think that's fair to say, right? So if your concerns are Norris can't stay on the ice, that's fair. He's on pace to play 74 games this year. Seems that's relatively healthy. So I get it. The health concerns are valid, but you have to take some risk here because the other risk was holding on to Cozens and hope he figures it out. And if you did that for much longer, you're not fetching a guy like Josh Norris into the return.
No, and again, like 50 games and 53 games, and then 8 games in 22-23. So again, he has had, a string here, but now with the 3 surgeries, and he's been on the shelf a little bit this season as well. I know that they both have pretty significant term left on their contract, but from the way Brady Tkachuk was pretty emotional with the way that they got rid of Josh Norris. These are guys that have played together with the U.S. development program, World Juniors, and obviously together in Ottawa their entire careers. They've kind of built up together with Ottawa's core, just the same way that Cozens is kind of built up with the Sabres core. But as far as what they both have left on their contracts, they're both, Norris was on an 8-year deal, Cozens on a 7-year deal, but I believe they both have 6 years left on the contract for both of them. I'm trying to get that right now, but I believe that regardless of that, they both have significant years left on their contracts. Norris is a year older than Cozens, but I think what Norris brings, as long as he can stay on the ice, I think that this is going to bring a little bit of jump to the Sabres. I expect him to possibly be the guy in the first power play unit, whether they want to keep Kulich with Thompson and Peterka because it has worked well, and kind of have him as the second line center, at least to start. I know Yuri Kulich was a paper transaction today. Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe Heather Engel tweeted that there was a paper transaction. So to allow Yuri Kulich to play in the AHL playoffs with Rochester, once the Sabres are eliminated, he can still go down there and help them during their playoff run. So as far as what Norris will bring and where he fits in the lineup, kind of got the forward lines up here now. It's basically just swapping Cozens with Norris right now for that part of it. And on the top power play unit right now, Alex Tuch, Josh Norris, JJ Peterka, Tage Thompson, Rasmus Dahlin, Austin. What intrigues you there?
I think what intrigues me on the power play there is just, again, nothing against Cozens at all. But Norris, I think Norris provides this, and it's hard here because I still think you had Jack Quinn on there, you had Yuri Kulich on there, so there has been shooting threats on the power play, but Norris is just another shooting threat who has had more success than those other guys have, right? He has been a productive power play player, so I think just throwing that out there is definitely a good thing. We'll get into this, I think, in the second half of the episode, but I am very interested what Lindy Ruff does with the lineup going forward the rest of the year. Based off what Kevin Adams said today, he expects Norris to be ready for tomorrow, so that's interesting. At least we can look forward to that. Bernard Docker is a different story. We'll get into him a bit, but I think Norris, at least for right now, the Sabres power play is just in desperate need of anything to get it going, so I hope he's on the first power play, and I hope he gets every opportunity here for the rest of the season, because that's all this should be about, is kind of finding what works and what clicks. But his ability to shoot, his playmaking on the power play is a lot better than his 5-on-5 playmaking, which is a good thing. A little bit interesting there as well, because, Kulich, Quinn, Cozens, particularly Quinn and Kulich, aren't nearly as gifted as playmakers as I think Cozens was. Cozens was a little bit better, but if Norris can provide that as well, like I said, with Cozens, it's just, I'm not going to sit here and pretend this was a home run trade. I am in favor of this trade because it's the change that I think we asked for and we needed. But Cozens was just, you just weren't getting anything out of him. So if Norris gives you anything, that's a good thing for the Sabres this year, especially if he can give it to you on the power play and on the penalty kill, because he did play in all situations for Ottawa. And at least in this short interim, I expect him to play in all situations for Buffalo as well, because he's shown he's valuable in all situations. Got to give it a go and see if it works.
He's got 4 shorthanded points this year, and I believe 3 of them are goals. So he's a dangerous player, even down a man. As far as the contracts go, Cozens is in year 2 of a 7-year contract worth 7.1. Norris is in year 3 of an 8-year deal worth 7.95. So again, Norris has a $800,000 more of a cap hit than Cozens, but again, in year 3 of an 8-year deal, Cozens in year 2 of a 7-year deal, and the 1-year age difference. So Adams said he was looking to move in money if he had to move out money, and I think Steve Stais was kind of the same way in Ottawa. So the contracts kind of line up really nicely, and just a change of scenery for both players. I think this is a trade that we could look back on, and regardless of how Gilbert and Bernard Docker and the second round pick work out, between Cozens and Norris, this could be a really nice trade for both sides to really kind of untap what the potential is for both these guys.
Yeah, 100%. Like I said, Dylan Cozens is not a guy that I think Sabres fans wish ill will towards and don't want to see him. It might be a little bit different now because he's on the Senators and also screw the Senators. So I really hope they don't make the playoffs. But I would love it if Cozens could figure it out again. You know what I mean? He gave it his all when he was here, and he was a guy that really did want to be a part of this team going forward and wanted to be part of that group. He grew up with these guys, kind of like you said. It just, like I said, whatever happened, we all point to the Hathaway fight because really he hasn't been the same since that happened. But it just, something hasn't clicked with him, and it got to the point this year where you could just tell, he didn't look like he knew what to do with the puck on his stick. It looked like he didn't want the puck on his stick. It looked like he didn't want to be near the hockey puck, which is not a good thing for someone who you expect to be your second line center. Change of scenery was desperately needed. And like I said, both players are relatively similar. There was people the Sabres are a dumpster fire. They deserve everything that they get, but it's so weird to see certain things from certain people who don't follow the team. Everyone was talking about, oh my God, the Sens got younger and cheaper. Guys, he's 18 months older than him, 15 months older than him, and it's $800,000 a year. It's not like they get technically they got younger and cheaper, sure, but we're not talking about a drastic change here. So it's just things like that where it's just God damn, you guys are going to make me root against Dylan Cozens because you guys are just being so dumb. I saw people be like, the Buffalo Sabres should never be allowed to make a trade again because they gave up on Dylan Cozens. I don't know. He wasn't working out here.
We wanted them to make a move, and they made a move.
Most of the people I saw say that were not Sabres fans, by the way. I just want to say that. It was just certain people. It's just there's a core move that happened. They got a player of similar value and similar role with term and a potential. We'll see what happens with Bernard Docker, but they got some potential with there as well. So I don't know. I think it's, like I said, a trade I think every Sabres fan can get behind because it's a core move. It's a guy who they expect to slot in as their second line center now. Similar age, similar cap hit. Although I think he is the Sabres' highest paid forward now, which I thought was a little bit funny.
Yeah, that is definitely interesting. Any quick thoughts on, obviously, Dennis Gilbert, a Buffalo native, 5 points in 25 games. Is a part of the deal and a second-round pick, which, again, we talk about the Sabres have accumulated enough prospects and draft picks over the years that giving up a second-round pick in this trade, for some security for Ottawa, I guess, with, Bernard Docker, if he does end up becoming anything as a former first-round pick himself. Any quick thoughts on kind of the rest of that trade?
From a Buffalo perspective, because I imagine we're gonna want to break down Bernard Docker here in a bit. From a Sabres perspective, I try to tell people a second-round pick, you can be annoyed with it, it's fine, but guys, it's a second-round pick 2 years from now. The Sabres don't need any more second-round picks. The Sabres don't need to be worried about holding on to draft picks anymore. It's not good for your mental health to freak out about that because there's so much more wrong with this team than giving up the second-round pick in this trade. We saw how much they value second-round picks. They gave up one for Beck Mallenstein, right? Gilbert, I think he's a fine, serviceable seventh defenseman. I like some of the stuff that he brought to Buffalo, but it was also a kind of deal where once Gilbert's been in for more than 3 or 4 games in a row, it's not a good thing. Brings that physicality, people talk about it however you want. He did that fight off the jump and, think of whatever you want of that. But he did provide that. I think he provides some nice defensive depth for Ottawa, who is on the middle of a playoff push here. Like I said, I don't know how much he's going to play for the Sens. He didn't play all that much for the Sabres here, so I imagine his role will be similar. It's again, if Dennis Gilbert's something that's got to be thrown into that deal to make it work, that's what you do.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically it. I mean, I wasn't too upset to see that Dennis Gilbert was a part of the deal. Probably had to move in a body, move out a body. Both teams got a forward, and both teams got a defenseman in the trade.